Good evening. 5 British nationals being held by pro-Russian forces in eastern Ukraine have now been released. They've been flown to Saudi Arabia, where these pictures of them arriving have just been released. The Prime Minister Liz Truss, who's at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, called the news hugely welcome and said that their safe return ended months of uncertainty and suffering for them and their families. She went on to thank the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky for his efforts to secure their release and for the Saudi government's assistance with mediation. The BBC understands that the men being released include Aidan Aslin from Nottinghamshire, who had been helping to defend the city of Mariupol as part of Ukraine's armed forces, and also John Harding, a man in his 50s, originally from Sunderland. Our diplomatic correspondent James Landale is with me. Take us through it, out of the blue.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, certainly those people in the know heard a few whispers this might be in the offing a few days ago, but certainly it was not expected. These negotiations for the fate of these men has been going on for months now, and there has been no expectation of any signal of any move from the Russian front. So the question, of course, is why now? Why has this happened today? Why? Because essentially this is largely in the gift of the Kremlin to actually decide whether or not these men should be released. And so why has that decision been made? Why has it been made on the same day that President Putin makes a statement to the media in a speech in Moscow in which he not only announces the partial mobilization of Russian reservists, 300,000 of them, but also rattles a pretty firm nuclear sabre? So the question that diplomats are asking tonight, and they don't know what the answer to this is Mr. Putin on one hand threatening, but also making a gesture of goodwill on the other, all at the same time? Or is that overthinking it? When I've been talking to people, they don't know the answer to that question. Right,
yes, I've got nuclear weapons, but here are your prisoners back. Saudi Arabia played a role in this. Take us through that.
Well, again, we don't know the details about it. This is another surprise. We simply didn't know that the Saudis were involved in that. But look, the Saudis do have good relations with Russia at the moment. They have not broken with Russia during this whole conflict. All those oil groups, OPEC Plus and things like that, which Russia plays a role as a major oil producer, they've carried on. They continued. So those relationships are there. And clearly that is a relationship that has been used by the Russians to allow for this mediation to take place. But as we've seen from these pictures just now, the Saudis have been very much involved in it and have been thanked not just by the Prime Minister Liz Truss, but also by the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly.